This chilling nightmare happened in early 2000 when arcades were still a happening place for kids to go to play games and socialize with their friends. Being a gamer with a high score carried a little bit of status, and challenges were common among friends. We played the hottest games of the time: Project Justice, Guilty Gear X, Virtua NBA, and of course Metal Slug and Marvel vs. Capcom. These were awesome games. We saved our allowance from chores around the house to be able to meet at the arcade on Saturday night and sometimes during the week for a grudge match. Since I'm from a small Midwestern town, there were few worries about creeps or derelicts hanging around. Most everybody knew everyone, and we felt safe, and our parents didn't worry much either. Wear a helmet when riding our bikes home was about the only rule. It was unheard of for something bad to happen. Sure, some bad things did happen, but it was really rare. Well, this was one of those rare occasions. I was with my neighbor, a kid I played with often at the Astro Pizza and Arcade. We liked this place a lot because they had fantastic pepperoni pizza and root beer, as well as the best arcade games. We had a pizza and then went into the game arcade to shoot some basketballs and race the motorcycles. Our parents didn't mind us being out so late as long as we walked home together before dark. We were there about 2 hours before it became dusk, and I said we better head for home. But my friend said, please, let's just play one more game. And it wasn't hard to twist my arm. We wouldn't be home much after dark. We headed over to play Super Mario, and there was a man playing it. We were super bummed, and I guess we let that be known without intention. The guy we had never seen before says, "You kids want to play. Here, take over. I'm done." We jumped in without hesitation, saying, "Thanks, man. You're welcome." It could be your lucky day because I also have all these Astro Arcade tokens that I won't be using because I'm leaving town tonight. We said sure, and he must have had 100 tokens in a paper bag he handed us. We said thanks and then turned back to our game as we had only a few minutes before we really had to go. But as we played, the dude stood behind us watching and shouting, "Yeah, got him and go, go, go." We didn't mind at first as he had just given us weeks worth of tokens and we were doing great on the game. When we game over buzz, we said bye and headed for the door. "Hey, wait a minute, guys. I have another bag of tokens in my truck if you want them as well. I won't be needing them. Come with me and you can have them." We were stoked with this windfall and bounded for the front. But the man said, "Hey guys, my truck is out back. Come this way, we'll use the back exit." We began to follow him to the back of the arcade, which was pretty dark and no one was playing any of the games in that corner of the arcade. My neighbor and I simultaneously and all of a sudden knew something was not right with this. We were following some stranger whom we did not know out into an unlit dark rear parking lot. We really had no idea what his intentions were, and this spooked us pretty badly. So we said, we really got to get home, but thanks for the offer, but we'll pass. He became incensed and grabbed my arm really hard and started to pull me out the back exit. I was struggling to free myself, but his grip on me was so tight. I gave a gasp and looked at my friend who grabbed my other arm and started screaming, "Let him go!" The screams brought the manager on the run, and he is yelling at the man, "Let that boy go!" The man released his grip and bolted out the door into the back parking lot. We heard the tires on his truck screeching, and the manager looked out the back door to get the license plate number, but it was too dark to read. Thankfully, good sense found its way into our heads that night, and we didn't follow that creep into his truck. Who knows what would have happened to us? Americana Amusement Park. My hometown is in the middle of nowhere, USA. We've got miles of corn and wheat fields in all directions. Stephen King probably thought up this town in one of his books, isolated and separated from the rest of America by miles of nothingness. And for a 16-year-old in 2017, it was a hopeless dead end. Fun was hunting pheasant in the fall and turkey in the spring. Winter was, well, nothing. And in the Summer Americana Amusement Park, which died sometime in the 1970s, but its relics still functioned. It's probably similar to many fun parks in rural America that are still hanging on. An old arcade still has pinball machines, along with a few upgrades, air hockey and hoop shooter. A 6-lane bowling alley, but only 5 lines work. Outside are a few batting cages, mostly rusted. A mini putt-putt, a driving range, and a go-kart racetrack called the Grand Prix. The fun park is about 2 miles outside town on Old Route 66. In its heyday, it was a great stop. If you drove by on most days now, you would think it was abandoned except for the flags waving in the wind saying open. Anyway, my girlfriend and I decided on one summer night to go pot and play at the arcade. Perhaps some of the boys from our school would be there, and for a couple of high school girls like us, that is always fun. It sure would beat another dull night sitting at the gazebo in the town center listening to karaoke with our parents. It was after 10 p.m. when we arrived. The amusement park is open until midnight, so we had a couple of hours to have fun. When we arrived, the parking lot was nearly deserted, surprising and not surprising. This place was on its last breath, even though it was the only entertainment for the town. But this stretch of 66 was passed by decades ago, so very few tourists found it anymore. We paid for the putters, got our golf ball, and made our way around the course. We knew it well since we played this same old course since childhood. There were 2 kids from the class below us, already ahead of us, and that was it. After we were halfway through, some old guy came in and sat on the bench with a view of the course next to the exit. He was 50 or maybe even 60. It was hard to judge his age in the park lights. My girlfriend and I didn't pay much attention to the guy. We just concentrated on our game and gossiped about the school love affairs making silent headlines this summer. At some point, I became aware that the man was staring at us with this creepy smile. I mentioned this to my friend and told her not to look. We just continued our game, but he was there staring at us every time we came into the sightline. We were putting in the 17th hole and the guy was still sitting and staring at us. To exit the course, we would have to walk right past him. I glimpsed over at my friend as we exited the gate to see if she was as frightened by the guy as I was. She didn't seem to notice. She was all about how she murdered me in putt, especially on the last 3 holes where she had hole-in-ones. As we passed the guy, he looked up and said, "What are 2 girls like you doing out so late at night?" My eyes went instantly to my friend, who was looking dead at me in annoyance with that question. She actually gave him the finger without even a glance at him, he continued. "Do your parents know that you are out?" I said, "They're waiting for us now to take us home, and we need to go, so please let us pass." He knew from my tone that I was lying to him and touched my arm and said, "That's not true. I saw you come in driving yourself." My friend jumps between me and the guy and says, "We're going to meet our boyfriends in the arcade, so just leave us alone and go away." Of course, this was a lie, as neither of us had a boyfriend. But she said it so clearly and quickly, it was a pretty convincing lie. The guy's face erupted into a vengeful expression. We were small girls and he was towering over us, pounding us with his angry face. We didn't give the man any time to react, and we ducked past him and ran into the arcade. There was something so terribly strange about the man at the pot. We were glad to be inside the arcade, but as we looked around, it was empty. Not even the manager, who was usually behind the food counter, wasn't there. We hid in the back, huddled low out of sight, and stayed there, hardly breathing for 15 minutes. Both of us were scared, and the amusement park was about to close, so we knew we had to run for it. We peered out the door and the parking lot was deserted. I could see our car, but I was so nervous and wanted to cry. My girlfriend took my arm, said, "Let's go," and pulled me out the door. As we crept to the car, trying to stay hidden, she said, "Get your keys out and get them ready." I took my keys in my hand and nearly fainted. I had a wave of dread wash over me. I had never locked the car. I stopped dead in my tracks and pulled my friend back. She said, "Stay here and I'll peek in the window. If I say run, run for the manager." What if he is in the car and he grabs her? My heart is beating so hard I can't hear myself think. As she approaches the car, I hear from the direction of the pot, "Hey, I see you." I look, and the man is starting to run in our direction. My friend yells to me, "Hurry, the car is locked." I'm screaming and running, and my friend shouts, "Hurry, unlock the door." I'm so frantic that I drop the keys and can't get them into the lock quickly enough. But I managed, and we both got in and locked the doors behind us just as the guy hammered the window with his fist. He is yanking on the door handle as I throw the car into gear. With the gas pedal to the floor, it just hardly moves fast enough. There was something very wrong with that man in his head to chase after 2 young girls as he did. We told our parents when we got home, and my dad called the sheriff to warn him that a drifter was hanging around the amusement park and arcade. He said he'd go check it out, but found the park empty when he arrived. Mr. Creep is still out there somewhere, so be careful and never go anywhere alone at night. When I graduated from high school, I got a job working at a bowling alley slash arcade slash restaurant. It was a trendy spot in our part of town. We had leagues for bowling and party rooms for birthdays. The arcade was always jammed with kids, especially on Friday nights and all day on Saturday. I started out washing dishes in the kitchen, then ran the bowling alley, and after a couple of years, was a night shift manager for the operations arcade. On weekday nights, the kitchen shut down at 9:30 and the bowling alley at 10:30, and the arcade was last at 11. This way, most of the staff left the building at about the same time after cleaning their area. But as it worked out in real life, the arcade was the last to turn out the lights and close the doors. So most often, as the night shift manager of the arcade, I was the last person in the building because by the time I vacuumed, disinfected, dumped the waste, and reorganized the tables and chairs in the snack area of the arcade, it was usually past midnight. The worst part was that I had to be back to open the arcade at 9 in the morning on Friday nights, which usually meant I had to arrive at 8:30. The bowling alley opened at 10, and the restaurant opened for lunch service at 11. So I was last out on Friday nights and first in on Saturday mornings. This one particular Friday night, I heard a strange noise while vacuuming. I was the only person still working, so this was unnerving. I turned the vacuum off to hear better. Nothing was out of the ordinary. I figured I was just tired and imagining things. I returned to my cleaning. However, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I have done this job on many Friday nights and never had this feeling in my gut. I couldn't define what it was, but the noise resonated in my head and I couldn't let go of it. So I decided to do a security sweep around the arcade before turning out the lights and locking up. I checked each aisle in both bathrooms. I looked around the cashier desk, prize zone, snack counter, and eating zone under the tables. I didn't see anyone or any raccoon or cat or stray dog, all of which I thought were possible. Satisfying everything was in order. I hit the light switches, locked the door, and headed home. In the morning, I arrived at 8:30, the first of the staff to open. As soon as I opened the door, I knew something was off. The chairs in the snack zone were out of place and I knew I had placed them orderly before I left. My mind raced to the night before and the strange sounds I heard. I made a quick sweep of the arcade and didn't see anyone. I thought waiting outside for more of my work associates to arrive might be safer. All go in together and do a search, but I've never been afraid in my life, so I wasn't going to begin now. I went in and walked silently around until I heard the noise. I walked silently, listening until I was in front of the Jurassic Park game, a big box with 2 seats inside and a large screen in front of them. I examined the box from the outside and then stuck my head inside for a better look, and I came face to face with a man sitting on the floor between the seats and the screen. He was dirty and I could smell him. He was so close to my face. He had straggly, filthy hair hanging over his face, and his beard was tangled and unkempt. The guy gripped me with his eyes and held me frozen for a minute. It was the most horrible and chilling nightmare I have ever experienced. His eyes were so dark, cold, and unfeeling that I knew I was in danger. It took me a full minute to break away from his hold on me, and as I turned to run, he rose up and growled like a bear. His arms were outstretched, tearing at the air with great force. I fell backward and scrambled to my feet just inches from his grasp. I ran out of the building, pulling the door shut and locking it. Other staff were arriving and I yelled, "Call the police!" Within a few minutes, 2 police cars pulled up. I opened the door, and they entered with guns drawn. Within minutes, they re-emerged from the arcade with a grisly man in handcuffs. The damage in the arcade was extensive. Games had been smashed and turned over. Broken glass was everywhere. Chairs had been thrown through the glass snack counter and another into a pinball machine. This all made it clear to me that the man was very dangerous. I was lucky to have escaped this chilling nightmare.